Today we're going to be learning Masechet Nedarim Daf Ayin Dalet. Today's daf is sponsored by Becky Goldstein in memory of her father Yoel Halevi Ben Meir and Rivka Fromm, teenage Holocaust survivor from Buchenwald. Abba arrived alone in Canada searching for his shlichut in life. He dedicated his life to Torah and Gemilut Chasadim. He challenged my thirst for learning. I miss his special nigunim. He was my guiding light. Okay, this is the daf for Shabbat. We're going to start at the Mishna at the top of the page. Shomeret yabam. Explain what this is. Those who learn Yevamot will be familiar with this term. If not, I will give you some background. Shomeret yabam is someone who is waiting to do the mitzvah of yibum. That means her husband died they had no children, and therefore she is supposed to marry. He had no children, so she is supposed to marry his brother, one of his brothers. And while she's waiting for this to happen, he either does yibum, which is fulfilled by having relations with her, or he does chalitza, which is the whole thing with the shoe. She takes off his shoe, she spits in his shoe, and says, you didn't want to continue your brother's name. It's kind of like a divorce, but a little bit different. So Shomeret Yabam, the question is, while she's in this interim stage, and you might remember from Yibum that there was this whole discussion, how close is their connection? Are they somewhat like they're married because they're supposed to get married to each other or not? We're going to see in the Mishna, does it depend if there's only one brother? What if there's a number of brothers, 2 brothers, or 3 brothers? And then it's not clear which one's going to marry. So the question is, during this interim stage, can he nullify her vows? So to which the Mishna says, Shomeret Yabam, we're going to have 3 opinions. Bein liyabam echad, bein l'shnei yabamim. It doesn't matter if there's 1 brother, 2 brothers, 3 brothers, 4 brothers, doesn't make a difference. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Yafel, he says, the brother can nullify her vows. Now, what, all brothers? So we'll see later in the Gemara what exactly this means. But it seems like 1 brother can come along and nullify her vows. Rabbi Yoshua, it doesn't mention anything about the father or anything else. We'll see later in the Gemara. The Gemara is going to say, well, it must be. First, they're going to assume no, and then they're saying it must be he means with the father, okay, not by himself, because he's certainly not like a married man. He's not married to her. It's maybe similar more to betrothal. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, le'echad v'lo l'shnayim. Only if there's 1 brother, but if there's 2 brothers, okay, let's say there was Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Levi dies. His wife falls yibum to Reuven and Shimon. If it's 2 of them, then no, they can't be Mayfair because either one of them, we don't know which one's going to be the one. But if there's only Reuven and Levi dies, and she falls to yibum to Reuven, since he's the one, therefore he can nullify her vows. Rabbi Akiva Omer, lo lecha v'lo l'shnayim, no way, no how. He's not married to her. He can't nullify her vows at all. So now we're going to see in the Mishnah, they're going to have a discussion between them. And we're going to see a little bit on what basis they think this, although the Gemara will explain it even better. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, ma'im isha shekanahu la'atzmo, harehu mefer nedareha. If a woman is acquired by a man himself, meaning if he betroths her, harehu mefer nedareha, he can, right? He decides, right? There's no connection between these 2 people, but he decides and she decides, right? We want to get betrothed to each other. So you can only do betrothal with her, if she wants to. She agrees with her agreement, her consent. That was the word I was looking for. So now, if he takes some random woman he has no connection to, and he acquires her, he can be mayfair her nedarim. He can nullify her vows. So ishashi knula min hashamayim. This woman is not some random woman that he's going to end up marrying. It's a woman that God declared by the laws of the Torah that he's supposed to be marrying her. She's supposed to be acquired by him. So that is obviously much more strong than 2 random people. So of course he should be able to nullify her vows. Now, right now, doesn't sound like he did any sort of form of erusin. But soon we're going to see that Rabbi Ami explains that it must be he did something like erusin. You might remember this from yibum from Yevamot called maamar, which is similar. Okay, yibum I said is fulfilled by having relations, but the problem is that, first of all, that's a very primitive way, what you're going to say. Okay, having intercourse with a woman, that's how you fulfill your mitzvah. And before you do anything else, so the rabbis instituted, for various reasons, that being one of them, this thing called maamar, that we're going to have something that's like, it's parallel to kiddushin for yibum, okay, so that he doesn't just get into bed with her. Okay, so there's this parallel action called maamar, Even though it's not mentioned here in the Mishnah at all, we don't know if there was maamar or not. Rabbi Ami is going to assume that it must be he meant there's maamar, and then there's a normal comparison here. Right? We have a man who had no connection to the woman from the beginning versus a man who had a connection to the woman because the Torah commanded it, right? God commanded it. So then we have stage 2 is he does kiddushin and the other one does maamar. And then they're at equal footing, right? But this one is much closer, the yabam, because the Torah said they should get married together. So of course, if the first one could be made for the Nedarim, the regular marriage, obviously in this case as well, even though, right, they only did maamar. We'll talk about that soon. Again, like I said, the Mishnah makes no mention of it, but it seems to be somewhat implied here. The Gemara is going to explain why Rabbi Ami thinks it must be there was maamar. Amar la Rabbi Akiva, no way, no how. I'm going to knock down your logical argument. When he acquires this woman through kiddushin, this woman who was a pnuya, as they say in Hebrew, she was free to anybody before she was single. Once she gets betrothed, she's forbidden to everybody else. She's only going to be ultimately permitted to him in marriage, but she's forbidden to everybody else. But this woman who is betrothed to him connected to him by Torah law, as you have to marry him, but she was also connected by Torah law to his brothers as well. So he doesn't have something unique, right? Rabbi Eliezer said, whether he has one brother, no brothers, 2 brothers, 3 brothers, it doesn't make a difference. He can nullify our vows, to which Rabbi Akiva says, well, then they're not comparable, because your situation described as if, right, the way you describe the comparison, it's not the same. A betrothed man is betrothed to this woman who's now forbidden to the rest of the world. This woman is permitted to other people besides him, his other brothers. To which Rabbi Yeshua comes in, who Rabbi Yeshua distinguished between one brother and no brothers, and right, he being the only one. Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua, Akiva, dvaracha b'shnei yevamim. You have a good argument against Rabbi Eliezer's element of 2 brothers. But mata meshiva yabam achad. But what do you have to say to my opinion? My opinion, it's equal. Basically, if I take Rabbi Eliezer and I apply it, well, then it's exactly the same. One man, right? She's exclusive to him. And then the logic should work. So what are you going to say to that? Amar lo, he basically says the Yevamot is not acquired by the husband. Maybe he means through maamar, we don't know. In the same way that an arusa is gmura l'isha. In other words, the relationship. You can say what you want. Logic, not right, from God, not from God. But the fact is, halacha on the ground, and we'll see this later, the very end of our Gemara for today is going to quote a Breita where he says the same thing, but in different words, that, and they're going to learn from there. It's not stated explicitly. But when it comes to other laws, for example, nara murasa, betrothed woman who sleeps with another man, she sleeps with another man, she gets skila, stoned. But if a shomeret yabam sleeps with a different man, she doesn't get stoned. So there you see, and even if she did maamar, again, we haven't talked about maamar, but we're going to understand all of this as if there was maamar. So even if they did some action that's parallel to kiddushin, her status is not the same. So therefore, he says, the proof is in the law. They're not the same in that area. Therefore, they're not going to be the same in annulling vows either. To which the Gemara starts off and wants to understand all the approaches. And the Gemara immediately introduces the word zika, which wasn't here until now. Zika, as I said, is something we describe in Masechet Yevamot, the big theme throughout the Masechet. Do we hold zika? Do we not hold zika? How much do we assume the yabam and his future potential wife, the Yevamot, are connected as if through some sort of, right? How strong is the connection between them before they've actually done yibum? Or is it not? Okay? Until they actually do yibum, there's really no connection. Yes, it's true, there's a commandment, but also they could do chalitza, so maybe they're not so connected. There are all sorts of ramifications of this, so our Mishnah is one of them. Bishlama Rabbi Akiva savar ein zika. So Rabbi Akiva very simply holds, ein zika, there is no zika. Okay? We don't hold that there's zika, and this is, as I said, a big machloket throughout Masechet Yevamot. So he basically says there's no zika, and therefore there's no connection between them. And again, Erusin is stronger than maamar, and therefore he can't annul her vows, even if he's the only brother. Rabbi Yeshua savar yesh zika. Yeshua says there's zika, but again, the zika will only be strong if there's only one brother. If there's 2 brothers, then they're sharing the zika, and then neither one can annul the vow. Ela Rabbi Eliezer, my timing. But what's Rabbi Eliezer's reason? And we're going to raise a question on him. Zika. If he holds there's zika, but ain't brera. But we don't hold brera. Remember, brera, it's also a big machloket we've seen throughout Shas. I'm going to assume here that we don't hold by brera. Brera is retroactive designation. If Reuven was the one who comes over and annuls her vow first, if we'd say there's brera, then we could say, okay, well, there's zika. They're connected, but they're only connected if he's the only one. Well, as soon as he does some action to show connection to her, he becomes the one. That would be yesh brera, that retroactively was designated as if before he did it, he was the one, once he does it. But we don't hold brera. So that wouldn't work. To which Amar Rabbi Ami, Kigon Sha'asaba Ma'amal. And this I kept making reference to, but now we see it inside. Rabbi Ami says it must be that he already did Ma'amal, which is like Kiddushin. And then he designated her to be to him. And there you have it. That's why. So number one, there's zika. And he did Ma'amal, which makes it much stronger. So even if there's two brothers, he's the one who chose, I'm going to be the one to do the mitzvah. And he started. He didn't finish, but he started. Well, we'll see. Maybe that's important that he didn't finish it. And maybe that's why there's disagreement here. And not only that, but you have to say, you might remember this from Masechet Yevamot. If not, we'll review anyway. Rabbi Eliezer, Savar leke Beit Shamai, de'amrei maamar koneh kinyan kabel. You have to say, and there's a big debate about maamar as well. How much of a kinyan is this? Is this just something very symbolic? Something the rabbis instituted. So maybe it's just symbolic. It doesn't really have serious halachic significance. But Beit Shamai said, it's koneh kinyan gamur. It's a full acquiring. It's an act of a kinyan, as we say. So therefore, once he does, so Rabbi Eliezer basically holds, let's go backwards now. He holds, they did maamar, and he holds like Beit Shammai, the maamar is significant, and that's why he can annul her vows. Rabbi Yeshua Amal, Omer Lecha, Rabbi Yeshua will say, Hanimile, or Amar, could say it's Amal, right? I think, yeah. Rabbi Yeshua Amal, Lecha, he could say to you if he were here, Hanimile b'chad yabam. That's only true when there's one yabam. When there's two yavamim, it's not strong enough. Why? It's a rhetorical question. It says, how could there possibly be a thing? Now, you might remember we learned this in Masechet Yevamot. Is there maamar after maamar? What happens if one brother does maamar and the other brother does maamar? What happens if one brother does maamar and the other one gives a get? If you remember, a get in yibum means there is no get in yibum, it's chalitza. But what it means is the brother's rejecting her. Once he rejects her, no one can marry her. So basically, the get overrides ma'amal. Also, if the other brother does chalitza, it overrides ma'amal. Okay? If the other brother does bi'ah, if he has relations with her, it overrides the ma'amal. So basically, right, he's kind of taken her already to do yibum. Ma'amal, right, doesn't have so much strength that it can't be overridden by another brother. So comes Rabbi Yeshua and he says, when there's one brother and there's ma'amar, great, perfect. Then he could do afarah because he did a kinyan on her, no problem. But when there's two brothers, it can't be mi'ika, midi. Could it be something that, I'm just reviewing that sentence again and going through it. When one brother comes, after the Reuven does ma'amal, Shimon comes, let's just assume, right, there's Reuven and Shimon. Shimon does bi'ah with her, he has relations with her, or he gives her a get, obigita, and then Reuven's going to come and be made for the neder? Can't possibly be. In other words, ma'amar is not that strong because it can be overridden by the other brother. So once his other brothers, we don't give him the option to be made for the neder, because what if his brother comes later and uproots his ma'amar? Rabbi Akiva Savar simply ein zika. Okay. So those are our three explanations. You can look at the chart on today's study guide, and it charts out the three approaches and the explanations. Now we start asking, that was all Rabbi Ami had to explain to us. The real problem was Rabbi Eliezer's opinion. And he explains Rabbi Eliezer's opinion in saying there was ma'amar. If there wasn't ma'amar, there's nothing to talk about when there's more than one brother. So now we're going to ask two or possibly three questions of Rabbi Ami. I say because the third section here, it's not clear whether it's a question or whether it's more of said in a statement. We'll get to that when we get there. Ula Rabbi Elazar, don't read it as Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Elazar, who's an Emora, not the same Tana Rabbi Eliezer who appears in our Mishna. The Rabbi Elazar, the Amal, who said, Ma'amar lebeit Shamai, eno koneh ela lidchot b'tzara. There's an opinion of Beit Shamai. Some people think that Beit Shamai held that Ma'amar is kinyan gamur, it's complete. But, right, like Kiddushin. But Rabbi Elazar holds that Beit Shamai only said, and now before I explain this, I just want to tell you there's two explanations. Rashi has a much more complicated explanation of this. It's in Daf Kaf Tet of Yevamot. I'm going to explain according to the simpler explanation, which is Tosefta and the Meiri. That when Beit Shamai says maamar is koneh, he doesn't mean a kinyan gamul, complete acquiring. All it does is, now let's go back to our case. Levi was married to two women, Yael and Noah. Levi died. His two wives fall to Reuven. Okay, let's just assume there's Reuven right now. Now, they fall to Reuven for yibum. What happens? Reuven's supposed to do yibum or chalitza with one of them, and only after that, the other one can go get married to whoever they want. And if the first one, right, if he does chalitza to Yael, then Yael and Noah can go get married. If he does yibum to Yael, then Yael is married to Reuven, and Noah can go marry whoever she wants. But comes Beit Shamai and says, if Reuven does maamar, which is like this engaged betrothal, with Yael, then Noah becomes permitted to go marry anyone she wants. Okay? That's the theory here. And then, that's all it does, though. There's no real acquiring of Yael by Reuven. It's just that it shows I plan to do whatever I'm going to do with you, frees up the other wife, but it doesn't really do a real kinyan, which means how can he then, according to Rabbi Eliezer's approach to Beit Shamai, how can we explain Rabbi Eliezer? He shouldn't be allowed to nullify her vows. So, how can this be explained? To which the Gemara says, according to this, well, we're going to get even more specific. It wasn't just that he did maamar. It was more than that. At a certain point, if the husband, or the yabam, Reuven doesn't deal with, he does maamar with Yael, but then he never goes ahead and marries her. So Yael can take him to court and say, listen, he's supposed to marry me. Either marry me, do yibum, or divorce, give me chalitza, so that I can go and be free and go marry whoever I want. And mainly she's saying, I need some financial stability. It's not just I want a husband. I want someone to take care of me financially. So if he was put up in court because he wasn't dealing with it, and the court said, listen, deal with it. And until you deal with it, you have to pay her mizona. You owe her food. So start giving her food payments. Now the Mishna is talking about a case. So there was maamar. Then he started giving her food payments. Once he started giving her food payments, that gives him the rights to nullify her vows. And where did we learn this from? We talked about this earlier. We didn't read it inside, but we quoted, we talked about it. Rav Pinchas, as Rav Pinchas says, sorry, we did. It was in yesterday's stuff. As Rav Pinchas says, Mishmei derava, kol hanoderet al dat ba'ala hi noderet. Anyone who takes a vow, vows with the knowledge of her husband. Why? Because her husband is financially responsible for her. And therefore, since he's financially responsible, she won't take a vow unless he's going to agree to it. Same thing with this yabam. The yabam, while she's waiting to do yibum, the yabam already is financially supporting her. So therefore, she's obviously taking vows only if he's going to agree to them. That's what gives him the right to be made. So now, based on our question, according to Rabbi Eliezer and his understanding of Beit Shamai, we're going to have to explain, again, only according to him, we're going to have to explain that it was a more unique case. Not only was there maamar, but also he was financially supporting her. Next, now we're on Amud Bet. Tnan, second question. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Uma imisha. Okay, now we're just quoting our Mishnah, and we're going to prove in the language of our Mishnah there must be maamar, that it doesn't sound like this maamar. Okay? And then we're going to say why it's fine. There is. Uma imisha shekana la'atzmo. What did Rabbi Eliezer say in the Mishnah? A woman who a man takes on his own regular marriage, harehu mefer nedarim, he can annul her vows. Isha shehi knula min hashamayim enodin shemefer nedarim. So a woman who was God declared that they need to be together, obviously he should be able to. Now, what's the problem here? Well, ibisha saba ma'amal kanala atzmo. Who? Ibisha saba ma'amal kanala atzmo. Now, if he did ma'amal, he acquired her for himself. One second. So ma'amar kanal atzmo. One second. Right. And then, that's the issue. He says here, Isha sheknulo min hashamayim. What's the problem? The Mishna says, what's unique about this case, right? And that's if Rabbi Ami says that it's ma'amal, it's not Ikinu min hashamayim. He acquired her himself by doing an action of maamar. So that doesn't match the argument that Rabbi Eliezer made. Rabbi Eliezer was saying, God declared this. But if he did maamar, he created the relationship. And then it's just like betrothal, and it's no stronger, which was his whole argument. To which the Gemara says, what do you mean? No, he acquired her through maamar, that's true. But it was because God declared it. In other words, acquiring someone without God saying you should marry her is not the same as acquiring someone through maamar when God declared that you should acquire that woman. So the fact that they say there's a difference between God declaring and man declaring, it's also man in this case, but it's man and God versus man without God. Okay, and that still makes it strong, and that still works with Rabbi Eliezer. Now they're going to ask another question, possibly. Okay, the Gemara is going to start with the following words. Tifshot debai Rabbi. From Rabbi Ami, if Rabbi Ami says that this is maamar, that the case in the Mishna is maamar, then we should have been able to answer this question of Rabbi. And I'm explaining this part as if it's a question right now, and then I'll explain how it's not. Rabbi had a question at some point, and they didn't answer the question. So now they say, well, if it's so obvious that Rabbi Ami's right, then we would have been able to answer the question of Rabbi. And the fact that we didn't proves that Rabbi Ami's wrong. Or likewise, the Mishna, or in a different way, the Mishna is just saying, now that Rabbi Ami said this, and we resolved all the questions against him, and that's not a question at all, we can answer this question that Rabbi asked by the following. Okay, so this is an intro to either a question or just a statement about it. Maamar le Beit Shamai. So Rabbi asked the following question. Maamar, according to Beit Shamai, which is who we're discussing, erusinose, onisuinose. Is maamar comparable to the marriage ceremony or the betrothal ceremony? Until now, we seem to be saying it's the betrothal ceremony. Certainly not Beit Shamai. But Beit Shamai, who says it's koneh kinyan gamur, maybe it's a kinyan gamur of nisuin. And then you just haven't fulfilled yibum until you actually have intercourse with each other. But the rest of it is done, right? Even the marriage part is done. Or is it erusin? Is it just betrothal? So if you go by what Rabbi Ami said, that the husband can nullify the vows, then what would you say? Tifsho denisuinose. Why? Because, again, this all depends how you read it. But right now they're going to read it in one way, which I mentioned as I read the Mishnah, which is not the way I read it. But if it's betrothal, we know already, we've learned this many times, that when she's betrothed, it's not just the husband, it's also the father who have rights. And what did the Mishnah say? If she's a shomeret yabam, the betrothed, right, the yabam can then nullify her vows as if by himself. So there you have it. It must be like marriage if it was maamar, right? And that's what Rabbi Eliezer said. It's maamar koneh kinyan gamur. And now we have, according to Beit Shamai, because that's all Beit Shamai, according to Beit Shamai, maamar is like marriage, because you see here, the father doesn't even play a role. To which the Gemara says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak answers, no. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, ma yafer? Yafer b'shutafut. The Mishnah's topic wasn't the father. The father, it's obvious, is going to be part of the picture. She's not even married to him yet. So you could say, no, it's erusin, and it meant he has rights to annul with the father, but not without the father. Tanya nami hachi ki Rabbi Ami. Now we're going to bring a braita to say we hold like a braita to support Rabbi Ami. Rabbi Ami is in Amora. If he can use a braita to support what the Gemara can say, we have a braita to support his reading, it makes it much stronger. So now we're going to read this whole Mishnah. We're going to finish with that today. And then, this braita. And then the Gemara in the next step is going to say, how do we prove it from here? You can already start thinking as we read through, and we'll see. So now this is, it's actually a Tosefta that proves it. Shomeret yabam, ben yabam achad, ben shnei yavamim. This is going to start off just like the Mishnah. A shomeret yabam, she's waiting to do yibum, whether there's one brother or two brothers. Rabbi Eliezer or Mary Yafel, he says you can nullify the vow, the yabam. Rabbi Yoshua amar le'echav v'lo l'shnayim. Only if there's one brother, not two. Rabbi Akiva omer lo le'echav v'lo l'shnayim. Okay, not one, not two, not at all. Amar Rabbi Eliezer. So now we're going to have arguments similar but a little different than the ones we saw in our Mishnah. Umay nisha she'en lo chelek ba ad shelo tavo le'rishuto. A woman, the husband has no connection to her at all until he betroths her, right? Any random man and random woman, no connection and no rights to nullify her vows unless he betroths her. But mishabat lerishuto, as soon as he does the betrothal, nigmiralo, it's complete. He has complete rights with the father, but he has complete rights. Therefore, isha sheyesh lo chelek ad shelo tavo lerishuto, she already has a connection to him before they became betrothed, right? It's similar to where the Gemara said it's mina shamayim, but it's a little bit different. It's more that they're already connected to each other. It doesn't bring in God to the picture, but they're already connected. So mishabat lerishuto eno din shetigamer. So of course, when they do an action like, here it seems to indicate, like maamar, right? An action like erusin, which would be maamar, all the more so shetigamer. Shouldn't he have the rights to nullify her vows? So that already seems like it's proving Rabbi Ami, that there was maamar. Amar lo Rabbi Akiva. So Rabbi Akiva responds and says, "Lo, not true. Im amarta bi'isha shekanahu la'atzmo." If you're saying about a woman that he acquired himself, shekashem she'ein lo chelek ba, just like before the marriage, he had no rights to her yet. Ein la kach, after the erusin, ein la acherim chelek ba. Once he betroths her, no one else has rights to her anymore. But tomar bi'isha she'knu lo min hashamayim, but when it comes to a woman who God declared that they should be married, shekashem sheyesh lo chelek ima chelek, that he already has some rights beforehand, kach yesh la acherim chelek ba, but he's no different than the rest of his brothers, and there's numerous people who have rights to her. So therefore, we're not going to allow any one of them to nullify her vows because there's multiple people here. To which Amar lo Rabbi Yeshua Akiva dvaracha b'shnei yevamim. What you're saying, same kind of argument as in our Mishna, only applies if there's multiple brothers and there's other people who have rights to her or connection to her. But what are you going to say about one yabam? To which he answers, right, what if there's only one brother? And then Rabbi Yeshua says, at least my opinion should stand. Amar lo, now he says this very unclear statement, but we'll explain it the way the commentaries explain. Klum chilaklu al yabam echad v'al shnei yevamim ben sh'asa maamar ben shelo asa maamar. That's who said we're going to make this distinction, one yabam, two yevamim, whether he did maamar, whether he didn't do maamar. Ukishar dvarim ken nedarim. In other words, what he's basically saying is, forget about the one yabam, two yabam, forget about maamar, not maamar. I'm going to prove to you that no matter what, he doesn't have rights. How do I know so? Kishar dvarim ken nedarim. Just like in other areas of law, and this is the same argument he made in the Mishna, just using different words, just like in other areas of law, which the Gemara tomorrow is going to say, nara murasa, with the skila, with the stoning, whereas a shomer yabam doesn't get stoning if she sleeps with another man. So, therefore, we're going to treat, just like in other laws, we're going to treat Nedarim exactly the same way. And just like she's not going to get stoned because she's not really a betrothed woman, likewise, in Nedarim, he's not going to be able to annul her vows. So that has nothing to do with one yabam, two yabamim. My first argument, you're right, you could distinguish. But this argument holds water no matter what. And Bilashana Zev, nice ending to this Tosefta. And then, like I said, tomorrow we'll talk about how this provides a proof for Rabbi Ami. Bilashon hazeh amal ben Azai, chaval alecha ben Azai shalosh imashet Rabbi Akiva. In these words, after Rabbi Akiva gave that argument, Ben Azai said to himself in the third person, chaval for you, Ben Azai, that you weren't mishamesh, you didn't serve Rabbi Akiva more, and you would have learned from his brilliance. And he said, what a loss for you. Okay, for what a loss for myself, he says, that because he's so, so brilliant. Okay, with that, we finished today's daf. I'm going to just quickly review what we did. We brought three opinions in the Mishnah. The Mishnah itself showed some argumentation between them. The Gemara clarified what the machloket is and why each person said what they said. Mainly, it's a breakdown between yesh zika, ain zika. But then within Rabbi Eliezer, we're left to say, as Rabbi Ami says, it must be there was also maamar, because zika wouldn't be enough if there's more than one brother, because you need to use breira, which we're not using. And then with Rabbi Ami, we asked 2 or possibly 3 questions, or we asked 2 questions, and then the third was just kind of making a comment about something you can infer from his answer, but was rejected, and all the questions were resolved. And then we bring a braita to support that Rabbi Ami's explanation that it must be Rabbi Eliezer's time about there was ma'amal. And then tomorrow we'll talk about how the braita proves that Rabbi Eliezer holds that the Mishnah was talking about when there's, or Rabbi Eliezer's opinion in general is that he can nullify the neder as long as he did ma'amar. If he didn't do ma'amar, then he couldn't nullify the vow. With that, we'll finish for today. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Tov. We'll meet up on Sunday. On a Shabbat Shalom, if you're listening before Shabbat.